Welcome to the video demonstration for the fourth lab in the FortiAnalyzer course, Logs. My name is Bob Cunningham. I'm an instructor here at Fortinet. In this video, we're going to look at gathering benchmark diagnostics, enabling event handlers, looking at logs and event handler notifications, modifying disk quotas, and moving a device from one ADOM to another. We're going to start at page 64 in the lab guide, and we'll follow it more or less step by step. So the first thing we're going to do is to log into ADOM 1, and then we're going to click on System Settings. And looking at the system resources, we can see the average CPU usage, the memory usage, and of particular interest for this lab, the disk usage. Now, how long is that for? Over a week, a year, a day, an hour, a minute? Let's click on the gear icon and change the setting here to historical. And we can change the time frame for the last 10 minutes, the last day. We're going to pick the last hour. And we can see over our time period how much memory has been used, how much CPU usage has been used, etc. The next thing we're going to look at is event handlers. Event handlers tell us what messages to extract from the log and display in event management. The first thing we need to do is to import the event handlers into the ADOM. So we're going to change from ADOM 1 to the root ADOM. Under System Settings, we're going to go to FortiSoc. Now event handlers, and then event handler list. Now we're going to select the IPS critical severity, the UTM web filtering, the UTM app control event, and the IPS high severity. Go up to more, and we're going to export this, and it's going to save it as a file called IPS critical severity and 3 more. Now we're going to change ADOMs from the root to ADOM 1. Go more, and this time we're going to import. And here is critical severity and 3 more. Click OK. And we have successfully imported these items here. The next section is going to have us configure alerts for event handlers. This is something I previously configured, so we're just going to look and make sure it's all properly configured. We're going to highlight default compromised host here. Click Edit. And make sure first it's turned on. It is. Then we're going to come down here and select Send Email Alerts. And when we did that, we configured a source and destination email address, a subject, and then we had to configure an email server here. So all those things are properly configured. So we click OK. And we can take a look at the event handlers we imported. They are not going to be set up to alert, so we just want to make sure they're there. And they are. we're going to send out alerts to the IPS log. And the same is essentially true for all the other ones we imported, which are now showing up here. So what we've been doing so far has been setting the stage to generate some traffic. Now we're going to generate that traffic, and then in subsequent portions of the lab, we'll analyze that traffic. But right now, let's start generating it. So the first thing I want you to see is on the internal segmentation firewall, we have a security policy rule configured, and it has an antivirus profile on it, a web filtering profile, a DNS profile, an application profile, and of course, certificate inspection, which is decryption. Because we can't block things, we can't report things if we can't see them. Encryption makes things invisible. It makes them look random, so we can't identify patterns, so that's an important profile. The firewall inspection tester is going to be pushing traffic through the internal segmentation firewall to match this security policy rule. After we get that started, we'll open up another tool called NICTO, and it's going to push traffic through the local firewall, ports 1 to 3, and it's just going to look at the IPS called custom high security. It's going to be inspecting, but of course decryption, because it doesn't do any good to have the IPS if we're not decrypting. All right, let's make this smaller. Open up PuTTY, and there's already a pre-configured session here with the IP address SSH open, and the username is student. Password is, as always, password. So we're going to execute a command, or a script actually. And then want the password again. Our super secret password. And we're going to type in the command IP route to make sure we're pointed at the right place. We should be pointed to 10.0.3. Our default route goes through 10.0.3.254, which is what we want. So finally, we're ready to execute a Python script. Change the directory. And /fit.py all the repeat switch is just going to keep it going over and over and over and over again. So it's going to keep generating. We're going to leave this here. We're not going to close it, but instead we're going to open up another PuTTY session. And this time, we're going to the Linux saved session. Once again, we're going to log in as student with the password of password. And we'll type the following command. NICTO and that's working as well. Let's go back to our full screen view here. (8:1) log view. We've let these logs generate for about half an hour. So now it's time to start looking at the logs that we've created. So we are in log view here under FortiGate traffic. Now, there's a lot of options we have here. We could, kind of a little tool icon here on the right-hand side, and we could choose to select real-time logs, and we'll see that logs generated as they show up, as you just saw. They show up with the FortiAnalyzer, and they're inserted in real time. That may be desirable, but it can get confusing. So you may want to come over here and pause, and now you're still receiving the logs in real time, but they're not being displayed until you resume, and then the display will put the logs in as they arrive. You can choose to have the option of historical log. These are logs that have more details because they have been indexed into the SQL database. You can also decide you don't want to see them in a nice pretty format. You want to see exactly what is in the log data, the raw display. It's more difficult to read, but you're not putting a GUI between you and the actual raw information. However, for right now, we're going to go back to formatted log. Instead of traffic, we click on security. We see the security logs. We have the same options to do historical, real-time, raw, formatted in the security log. Under security, we also have antivirus, application control, web filtering, events, which include all types and system events. Lots of flexibility here. We have the option, and we should use this option, to add filters. We could say, I want to filter a certain source IP, a certain user, if we're using FSSO, a certain service, a certain application, date and time sent and received. A lot of stuff in here, a lot of stuff. In addition to the log view, we have an option to come up here and view in FortiView, which is a summary of our logs. And right now you're seeing our threat score as it varies at different times of the day. And we see our top threats. We could change the time frame here. Which devices are being displayed. We could take this and export it. We could look at the threat map. We could look at compromised hosts. FortiSandbox detection. Traffic could look at top sources, top destinations, top countries and regions. Now remember, we only have a couple policies, but top policy hits. Which policy rules that we're matching? Top DNS requests. Applications, top applications. Top cloud-based applications. And if we have multiple users, top cloud users. Top website domains. Top website categories. So there's a lot to look at here under FortiView. Now you remember we configured event notifications. To view those, we go to FortiSoc. Event monitor, all events. And these are the event notifications that have been generated. This is called a sub-event. By double-clicking that, I can see all the log events that relate to that sub-event. We set up log notifications, that is emails to be sent out in the event that certain things took place. Let's take a look at that. We're going to open up an email application here that we've already previously set up. It's been set up for us. And under the admin at training.lab, we'll see we have quite a few of these event notifications telling us the severity, who it's from, what the trigger event was, and then log details for us to examine. Now let's go back to our FortiAnalyzer. And change our view to FortiView. Let's explore a little bit more of what we can see in FortiView. I'm going to come up here to FortiView and click on Monitors. The first thing I want to note, when we're looking at all these widgets under the different categories here, this particular view, everything under FortiView and SOC, is kind of designed to be viewed under a large monitor like you might have at a security operations center, and looks a little crowded on a small laptop, which is what I'm on right now. Just keep that in mind. So we come up under monitors, and perhaps we'll choose traffic, and we see some widgets here that are populating the top countries and regions, the top sources, the top policy hits, the top destinations. I can add additional widgets here if I want to, or take some away. Change how I'm displaying them, as you just saw. Give myself more or less real estate. I can look at compromised hosts. Because we're just pretending to have a full network here, we don't have a top 10 here. We have one user who is infected, but we're seeing the infection, the virus he's infected with, appears to be emanating from this region of the world and attacking people in a lot of different locations. Under applications and websites, we see the top website domains, top cloud applications. We looked at some of this earlier. We can use to add a widget here, and you see there are other widgets we're not using right now. But we could choose to add any of these widgets. And this is a pretty valuable way to look at things to see what's happening in your whole network. Sometimes we're more concerned with what's happening with the FortiAnalyzer than we are with the records or logs that the FortiAnalyzer is providing to us. It could be a maintenance issue, it could be a sizing issue. There are a few CLI commands that will be helpful to us. I'm going to log in as admin with our password of password. And let's see what the log rate is. Now, the numbers we're going to look at in this section will be low because we're only generating a little teeny sample of logs, but this will help us to understand the principles involved. Diagnose FortiLog D for the daemon. The log rate will tell us every second, every 30 seconds, every 60 seconds, how many logs have been sent to the FortiAnalyzer. Diagnose FortiLog D message rate will tell us how many messages have been sent. Now, what is the difference? There may be no difference, but sometimes multiple log items can be sent in a single log. So in other words, if I use like the LZ4 compression format, I can have 4, 5, or 10 logs in one message. So the message rate is how many messages. Maybe I had 5 messages, but if each of those 5 messages contained 10 logs, there would be 50 logs. I could look at the log rate per device. And I could look at the log rate per type of log. Well, let's take a look at some diagnostics back on the FortiAnalyzer GUI. I'm in ADOM 1, that's where I want to be. But I'm in FortiView and I want to be in System Settings. Scroll down the dashboard and I can see, not directly related to what we're talking about, the system resources, the memory versus the CPU. I can see the insertion rate versus the receive rate. Now the receive rate is how many logs per second am I receiving. But it's possible that I'm not putting those logs into the SQL database as quickly as I'm receiving them. There could be a lag there. Now, interestingly, there could be a inverse lag where I'm actually see the, if I hover over this, and we don't have much going on here, but if I hover over the receive rate, is it possible that the insertion rate could be higher? It could be if the database is being rebuilt. But normally I'd be looking to say, okay, what's the insertion rate? Is it significantly lagging the receive rate? So I can look at the log receive monitor to see just what devices are sending. And then the log insert lag time. How much lag time is there between the receive rate and the insertion rate? Under storage information, if I highlight, let's say ADOM 1, and edit it, I can get detailed information about this ADOM, about the quotas that are being used, how much is used, how much is free, how much is available total. So we have 700 meg available for storage. We've used 31 meg. We have 649 meg free. For archiving, we have 300 meg available to archive. that is to compress and store, waiting for it to be offloaded to some other storage solution. I've used 8.7, so I've got 292 basically, or 291 if you round it down, free. When we have multiple ADOMs, it's possible that one ADOM is too small. It doesn't have enough storage space for the logs it's receiving, while another ADOM is too big. It has too much storage space for the logs it's receiving. So let's go ahead and figure out how to first diagnose that problem and then how to fix it. We're going to leave our GUI for a moment. We're going to open up a PuTTY session to the FortiAnalyzer. Log in as admin. Password of password. Now let's run the command diagnose log device. And make this a bit larger so that we can more easily read the output display. And you can look here and see for ADOM 1 and ADOM 2 how much use space we have, what the log rate is, what's been quarantined, how much retention time, how much quota we have for each one. So we might take that information now and go back to our GUI pretty much where we left off. We were in ADOM 1, system settings, storage information, but instead of being in storage information or storage info, we want to be in all ADOMs. And select ADOM 1 and edit it. Now when we scroll down, you can see here's our allocated size of 1 gig, 1,000 meg. Let's change that to 2,000. And you'll see that now, ADOM 1, edit. The size of our disk is twice what it was before. We've gone back to System Settings, All ADOMs, and we're going to create a new ADOM here and move our firewalls to it, or two of our firewalls there. So we'll create new. We'll give it the name new to keep things straight as to what's going on. It will be a fabric. We're going to select our devices, and we'll select the internal segmentation firewall and the local firewall and put them into the new ADOM. And I see here I've forgotten to change the disk storage. So let's go ahead and edit the new ADOM and change the amount of disk storage here to something that is more in keeping with the other ADOMs. And now we come up here to the device manager, select the new ADOM, and we can see that both firewalls are in the new ADOM and the logs are appropriately configured for this. Now we've created our new ADOM, we've put our firewalls in there, but we suspect that we still have logs on the old ADOM. Let's confirm that. Let's open up a PuTTY session. the FortiAnalyzer. Log as admin. Password of password. I'm going to make this a bit bigger so we can see the entire command. We'll put in the command diagnose test application log file D4, and we've got some output here. We're going to go way up the output to see what's going on here. It's listing every possible kind of ADOM here. And so we'll need to scroll down till we find two ADOMs, our new one, and ADOM 1. Here's the new one. ADOM new. Let's go a little further down and see if we can't find. There's the root right here. And ADOM 1 is just underneath it. So if we look here on ADOM 1, we can see the analytic log database has 52 meg of logs in there. And then the archive will be listed here as 252K. Now if we go up to the new ADOM, we can see that it has quite a bit less logs because we basically have, it's gotten some new logs since we began, but it's not nearly as much as the old ADOM. So what we want to do is to rebuild the new ADOM. Take the logs from ADOM 1 and put them over into ADOM, the new ADOM. So the command is execute SQL local rebuild ADOM new You want to continue? Yes, I do. It'll take a little while for the small database that we have to be written over from ADOM 1 into the new ADOM. Let's see if the database was successfully moved. We'll use the same command, diagnose test application log file D4. And as we did before, we're going to search here for the appropriate ADOMs. So if you remember, the size of the database in the new ADOM was 2 meg. It is now 33 meg, the size of the database for ADOM 1 was 52 meg. It's now only 2.5 meg. So we did successfully move our SQL database from ADOM 1 to the new ADOM. And this brings us to the end of Lab 4. Please join us for Lab 5 when we will discuss reports.